Hi, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Kelley, and this is the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast, where we focus on embracing new ideas and methods with enthusiasm and excitement in the construction industry.
Our goal is to bridge the gap between all professions that touch the industry and create a platform for different perspectives. From suppliers to end users, we want all voices to be heard. So welcome to today's podcast. We have Jeff Visnik on with Reclamation Collaborative. He's going to be talking about burnout and anything else he feels like would be great to talk about. So Jeff, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us some history on your experience in the construction industry.
Yeah, so I'm a certified fearless living coach and trainer, and also the founder of Reclamation Collaborative. I've been in the industry for almost 25 years at this point. I'm an electrical engineer and have spent most of my time on the design side of the industry. But a few years ago, I had a event happen in my career where I needed some help working through that. I found a coach, and she had such a transformative impact on me that I spent the next year working with her, learning how to coach and trying to bring what I've learned about fear to people in the construction industry. And burnout is a result of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think to start off, we wanted to see, what is burnout? What is the definition of burnout? Because I feel like a lot of people hear the word, they think they understand what it really is, and it might be being misdefined.
Yeah, I mean, it's a state of mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion that's caused by excessive or extended stress. And you really have to have three components to truly be in burnout. So the first is that energy depletion or feelings of exhaustion. The second is kind of a mental distance or cynicism or negativism around our jobs or whatever it is that we're experiencing in life. And then the third one is not feeling like we're being effective at work. So kind of a reduced personal efficacy. And you really do have to have all three to actually be burned out. Now, you can certainly be suffering from any of those three at any given time, but burnout's a combination of all three. And actually, engagement is the opposite of those three. So if we're engaged at work, then we are the opposite of those things. We're feeling energized, we're feeling very effective, and we're very positive about work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that people just assume that just because they're on a lengthy project or they're, tired from just working long hours, they assume they're burnt out. So that's not necessarily the case if they're not feeling the other two things.
Right.
Okay.
But it's pretty easy, like once you get into one, to pile up the other two pretty quickly. So
do you think that burnout is related to their mindsets? Like, if someone's just a negative person, do you feel like they're more likely to get burnt out because of their negativity? Or do you think, it could literally happen to anyone?
I think it could happen to anyone. I think the negativity around our job, or I think we get exhausted, we're not feeling effective, and then we create this distance between ourselves and our job to try to avoid how we're actually feeling. And I think that's where that negativity or cynicism around our job comes from. So I don't really know that it correlates to whether somebody's positive or negative, but the more negative you are, the less likely you are to see the good in things. And so it could probably be easier to fall into that trap.
Yeah. And did you kind of experience that? Is that why you shifted from the construction industry to a life coach?
Yeah, I was pretty burned out about everything. And one of the things, I'm not proud of this, but when I was running an office, I had about 40 employees, and there was something going on at home, and my wife was talking about, being there for her and the kids. And I made the comment that I spend all day giving everything I have to 40 people, and I don't have anything left to give at the end of the day. And that was not received super well. But, I think that's the trap that we can fall into when we're engaged in a big project or running a team, or, it's really easy to give everything you have to the people at work.
I feel like that's a common conversation I have
with at my house too. It's like you're at work, you're making decisions, you're thinking, problem solving all day long, and you come home and it's like you don't even really want to talk about it. You don't want to converse and do the same type of thinking with your family because you're tired. And that's very sad, right? For us to be a part of.
Well, and your kids don't understand either, right? Like regardless, they don't understand what that means. I mean, yeah, they go to school and but they don't know what burnout is. They don't understand why you can't give them 100%. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely
when iPads become a big
yeah
for the kids, right? I mean, I think of that when I'm at home with my daughter and I'm like so tired and I'm just like, here's your pad, because interacting with her is just as tiring as interacting with all the people at work. So I could totally see where you're coming from on that, Jeff. I'm sure if I said that to my husband, I would not get a good reaction either, because we've had conversations similar. Like, I don't want to converse and worry about all this stuff because I do this all day at work.
So I guess with that being said, I remember from the Lean Coffee, and I think I'd read on your website as well, that what is your thoughts on like work-life balance, that term? I know it kind of ties into this.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's nonsense. You know, that we're terrible multitaskers. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and doing something else, I'm probably doing both things poorly. And so this idea that we can do everything in our life well at the same time, I think just sets us up to be disappointed and frustrated with ourselves. And so I like, you know, we all have parts of our life that are important to us. And my ideal situation is that whatever it is that I've chosen to do, I can be fully present with that. You know, if I'm at home with the family, I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about my friends. If I'm with my friends, vice versa. And to me, that's the ideal goal, is that we can just be present, you know, and choose, you know, if we choose something, right, we don't forget the other things that are important, but we can choose those later. Whereas I think when we're burned out, right, we have no energy left to give to anything. And so it's really hard to keep those things a priority.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's just coming from our industry in general. I mean, I feel like, and Kelly actually was the one who brought this up, which I totally agree, but burnout is definitely a taboo in our industry. And like, why do you think that is? Why do you think that for some reason our industry, we don't have as much? I was reading I like Googled some statistics just to see, and I read that like 36% of workers state that their companies don't have anything put in place to help avoid burnout. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. You know, I think the construction industry in the past has been very male centric, and probably still is, probably a lot more than it should be. And there's this macho thing that, you know, I can handle it all, and I can't admit that I can't because then I'm weak, and I don't want people to see that I'm weak. But I also think a lot of our industry is set up in a way that, you know, like the engineering firms that I've worked for benefit from me working extra hours when they're not paying me and they're able to bill the client. And so I think, you know, we have pressure downward on our fees. And so the only way that people can really cope with that is to have people putting in extra effort. And it's very often encouraged to do that, and sometimes mandated. So I think it's a combination of those two things.
I was going to say, I feel like you're coming out of college and you're being told this is not a 40-hour a week industry. Like, it's minimum 50. And if you're 50, you're probably still not doing enough.
Right.
I feel like that is ingrained from day one, that you will work more. And that's interesting, is you're, especially from, you know, coming from the college side, you're coming in usually at a salary position, which is like you said, Jeff, and the companies are benefiting. We're going to wait for that to stop. Hold on. Can you hear it?
No.
Oh.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Kelly's at the airport, so she's fighting some things.
I was like, the one time I'm like saying something, it's like, let's interrupt me. Okay, she shut off now. they are pushing that you have to work that you have to do more.
Mhm.
And just like you said, Jeff, that they're benefiting, companies are benefiting from it. They're benefiting from us burning ourselves out financially, but we're not benefiting from it. And then
I don't think that's true though. I don't think they are benefiting. Like I think they
in the
I think
long
they-
run, yeah.
yeah, I think they think they're benefiting, but I think they're looking at the manpower and not looking at the actual productivity and the actual like effort that's being put in place. You know, I feel like I can do so much more in a 40-hour week if I like have, you know, I'm being present and I'm able to kind of do what I want to do outside of work and then go to work and get my job done. But I feel like I'm way more like present and I want to be there, and so I'm getting a lot more done than if I was being forced to work, you know, 50 to 60 hours a week. And I see that with even our field. Our field's the same way, you know.
Yeah, and I even encourage my employees, like 90 minutes is the longest you can sit here and focus on any given thing without needing to get up and take a break.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, go for a walk, do something else. You can't, the more I sit at my desk and just work, the quicker my productivity goes down. So I think that's a great point you make.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the other thing that happens, right, is there's this old school leadership mentality. And, you know, I've worked for firms where it was, you know, this is how we were treated, and so we're just treating you the same way. And, you know, without really even any thought given to whether that's a good way to do it or not. It's just how it was and how it shall be.
The hazing effect.
Yeah. Well, and that's how we've done it. That's how we've always done it. It seems to be, you know, the answer to everything. If we try to say, hey, like let's try to change this process or something, that's always done it. You know, that's just kind of, I feel like that's just our standard in construction. We're a lot more behind than a lot of other industries are.
Yeah.
You know, just in general. And so we're doing a lot more labor where we could potentially be utilizing, you know, a tool or something else to help us fast forward those technologies and everything to kind of help us so we're not working so many hours.
Yeah.
Makes me go, ew. Are we really people oriented when we think about the industry? We have labor out in the field to put the product in place, but are we really people oriented and making sure we're doing what's best for our people when it comes to the industry itself? Or are we just focusing on a financial schedule to get a building built?
I think it's better than it was when I started 25 years ago, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's progressing, but slowly. I guess in the meantime, do you, what are some things that we could, you know, us as just employees in general can help our employers understand how we want to be, you know, how we want to avoid burnout, and also what are some things that we can do to kind of cope if you have burnout or if you are burnt out?
Yeah. You know, I think talking about it is really important. You know, one thing I talk about a lot is our expectations of how things are going to go if we talk about something. And, you know, if I bring this up, I'm going to not get that promotion. I'm going to not get that raise. They're going to think less of me. And we don't know that any of that's true. But that thought that this could happen prevents us from even talking about it. So I think, you know, if you're on the verge of it, you know, hopefully talking to your employer will help. You know, maybe they'll do something about it to help you. Maybe not, but I guess if they don't, then you've got data, right? And that data can help you decide if this is a place I want to continue to work or not. So I think that's the biggest thing that we can do is just talk about it, be aware that, you know, what the symptoms are, how we can tell if we are burned out, and just have some conversations about it. I mean, one of the big things we can do when we're burned out is to prioritize self-care. You know, that may seem counterintuitive, but when we're in burnout, you know, things that stress us out, it can kind of become this vicious cycle where we get stressed out. Now we're burned out. Now we're stressed out about being burned out. Maybe we're not performing as well as we'd like to be. And so it can be hard to get out of it on your own. Sometimes you might need help, but connection is huge when we're burned out, right? We tend to isolate. And so connecting with other people, seeing what they're going through, that can be a really good thing for somebody who's feeling it, instead of isolating.
And what are some of the things that you teach kind of in some of your sessions, or some things you can give our listeners to use as like personal care type of things they can do to help?
Acknowledgements are a huge thing. Most of us are terrible at giving ourselves credit for all the great things that we do every day. So a practice of writing down 5 great things that I did today will totally shift your perspective on yourself and how you show up. And that can be a good one. Focusing on yourself and what you can control. So this is how I want to show up. If I show up this way, I'm going to be really proud of it no matter what happens. If something good happens, if something bad happens, I can still feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a couple things that, are really important for people when they're being really hard on themselves.
Yeah. And then do you see like majority of the people that you're training or that you're teaching, is it primarily construction, or are you kind of, primarily?
It's wholly on construction.
Okay.
I do have a couple of clients who are outside, like IT, but still pretty technical.
Yeah.
What I do applies to everybody, but construction's what I know. So
that makes sense.
What levels are you when you're saying in the construction, are you working with like field? Are you working with like office engineering in a similar area you were in? A wide variety of that?
It's a wide variety. I found that younger people tend to, maybe learn a little bit more about themselves and how they're, it's more educational. Whereas, when you get into your late 30s and 40s, people are a little more introspective and doing a deep dive and really trying to figure out how they can be better. So it does vary, but yeah, it's field, office, architects, engineers, contractors.
Say, what are you seeing as like the biggest issues that they're bringing to you, as in like what's really getting them to that burnout, those phase? Obviously there's multiple things, but are there like, a couple major things that they're like, this is consistently just taking me to that burnout level every single time?
That's a good question. I think people have a tendency to be really hard on themselves. So imposter syndrome shows up a lot, especially as we are promoted and we take on new responsibilities at work. So I think a lot of people show up kind of dealing with self-doubt and things like that. The expectations are huge. It's probably the hardest thing that I work with people on, recognizing that they're having them. And then what can you do about it? We do it from, taking a friend who's in town to a restaurant and saying, oh, this is my favorite restaurant, it's going to be great. Well, we don't know that for sure. It's great most of the time, or it's great every time we've been in the past. But if it isn't, we just set ourselves up to be disappointed and frustrated. And so we do stuff like that constantly. I think schedules is a huge thing right now, where timelines are really compressed and people feel like they're just being forced to do things that don't make sense. And so trying to push back on that's hard.
I think the scheduling thing that Kelley was mentioning earlier is, getting compressed, and them throwing as many people at a project as you can without, and it goes back to the whole manpower idea, is it's just a bunch of manpower hours, but they don't realize that it's also people at the end of the day. And someone can work, 60 hours a week, but they're not gonna, their 60th hour isn't gonna be the same quality as their first hour of the week. And I think that's what we don't understand as an industry, is that just because they say you could do something in a certain amount of time doesn't mean they can do that every single time. It's not consistent, because they're burning out throughout, their time, and especially the labor. It's you're burning out mentally and physically.
Yeah. And then the more you pile on those long weeks in a row, right, the worse it gets. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to do it every once in a while. I think we've all been in that position where, things were just out of control and there was really nothing you could do to avoid a 60, 70, or 80-hour week. But to do it consecutively, I think, is where we really get ourselves into trouble.
And where do you think that our industry needs to go to fix it, because it seems like it's not really fixing itself. If anything, I feel like the schedules are getting more compressed, and the expectation to get something done quicker is becoming, for some reason, it's becoming a standard in our industry.
Yeah, I'm always a big proponent of asking about the schedule. If somebody can give me a really great reason why the schedule is really compressed, then that's fine. We can work through that. But a lot of times I find that people just pick something arbitrarily, and there's no real reason behind it. And so if we ask about it, maybe there's some opportunity to shift it. But most of us, because we're scared of losing the client, because we don't want to upset people, we don't ask, we don't have these conversations, and then we are frustrated that we're having to put forth this effort without really knowing why.
I also wonder if it's because it's the miscommunication between the design team to construction and all the in-betweens. I feel like there's so much miscommunication, and so there's not really firm timelines until the construction schedule is built. And it's having that expectation of, okay, the construction schedule means the construction schedule, not the design and construction schedule. And I think that's what the hardest part about it is that there's just a lot of miscommunication between the two, and I feel like it's at fault, design and construction. I feel like we just don't do a good job communicating, and I feel like we're always bidding for projects and thinking, okay, well, we want to win it, so we're gonna have to figure out how to do the schedule. And instead of raising your hand and saying, hey guys, let's all be on the same page that the schedule's unrealistic, and that we don't want to burn our guys out, and that this needs to extend.
Yeah, what's interesting, we've gotten to this point where we're all kind of watching out for ourselves.
Yeah.
And the teamwork aspect has really gone away, I feel like. And I worked for a firm that did a lot of work in Texas, and, coming from Colorado, I did QC on a project, and I was like, man, how do you guys even build this? You'd be destroyed putting a set of drawings like this out in Colorado. And there was this kind of good old boys, we're going to take care of each other, we're a team thing that was happening down there that we don't experience up here in Colorado. And I don't know if it's still the same way down there, but it was interesting, the different dynamics and how that allowed, us to put less information on the drawings versus what's typically required up here. So
I feel like the processes there's so many processes and paperwork and steps that have to be done to just get a general contractor on board, to then get subs on board. So by the time that's all happening, you're so much farther down the road that schedule has to be compressed, because there's nothing else you can do, which then turns into we're about to burn out all of our people. And so it's, what are we doing? I mean, I did a pull plan today with the team, and we had to look at, we need to save 3 weeks, and it's early phases, but we've got to find 3 weeks, and we've got to figure out how to get it done. And if we could have started 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we wouldn't have been in this situation, but things are where it is now. And so now we all have to push and be uncomfortable and potentially work long hours to get there. But why are we as an industry consistently doing that? Why aren't we finding a way to improve the processes so we don't have to do that? That's where
we're a very reactive industry, not as much as a proactive industry as we should be for what we do for a living.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fear, right? In some ways, we're expecting the worst case to happen, and so we hold back, or we, instead of having a tough conversation. And you can call it tough or not, I don't even know if it is, but it's just a conversation, and it may go our way and it may not. But if we don't have it, then everything stays the same.
Do you think other industries are also facing this kind of burnout, or do you think construction is one of the top industries to be?
I think other industries face it, but I think companies maybe do a little bit more to help with it. But I mean, suicide and things like that, mental health issues, or construction's one of the worst industries for that, for sure, statistically even. Yeah.
And do you think it's because of the amount of hours we're working, or do you think it's something else?
Like I said, I think it's the type of people that maybe are in it.
Mhm.
You know, I think about, like I said, contractors, right? I can't ask for help. Engineers, you know, I need to know it all.
Mhm.
There's these perceptions of us that we try to live up to that we probably don't need to.
Right.
I think that's a benefit to getting a wider range of people within the industry instead of, you know, pushing people away and leaving the construction industry the way it is. It's finding ways to bring new people in. So like what you just said, Jeff, we can make those changes. We can have more majority of the people thinking, how can we improve it, in lieu of this is just how it's always been. And how do we get more of those individuals into the industry? Women, minorities. I mean, with the labor out in the fields getting less and less as the years go on, yet construction's not slowing down. And if suicide in our industry is that bad, why aren't we doing something to make sure we keep these people here and bring more people into the industry? And I think that's a major goal that has to happen. But are all companies doing that? Do all companies see it the same way? I think that's the hard part right now. And
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think kind of going off of that, the fact that I think it's like the chicken or the egg. We can't get more people to come into our industry because we burn them out and we have a reputation for doing that. So it's harder. So how are we supposed to sell ourselves as an industry? How are we supposed to invite these people, these different personalities and people that don't typically come to construction when we are known for burning our people out? Like, I don't want to go work for, like, I mean, obviously I'm in the industry and I love the industry, but if I didn't really know the industry and I heard about it and that's statistically, what is said about it, then why would I want to do that?
That's a good question. But I do think as we progress, leadership styles are changing and there is opportunity for younger people and like you said, Kelly, different types of people that come into the industry and change that. I think we're also very logical and we tend to look at data a lot. And, I did a workshop for a company who was having high turnover and they had all these things, right? Like more money, all these fact-based reasons, which are what people typically give to justify the emotional decision that they made. I'm going to use logic to justify my emotional decision, but my emotional decision was, I don't think this is going to change. And so I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm going to use money or whatever else to prove why I did it. And we just need to be able to, people aren't going to get everything that they want or everything that they ask for, but if they feel like they're heard and they can have a conversation about it, maybe they stay, maybe they don't. If that company kept 50% of their people who were leaving by having more open conversations, how much money does that save them? Probably a ton.
Just love it. They don't have that psychological safety to give the real reason of why they're going to leave, right? When you're doing an exit interview, that's probably the best time to say, this is why I'm leaving, but they still don't feel that they have enough safety to be able to give that. So, I've never really thought of it that way, that they're saying money, they're saying the easy, logical reasons in lieu of saying the real reasons. It's like, I don't know why, but it makes sense. But for some reason, until you just said it right now, I didn't ever connect it that way. Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, as leaders in a firm, right, you have to make people feel safe that they can have this conversation and not get in trouble.
Right.
And saying that's one thing, but actually acting on it and showing them that that's what's really going to happen is key. I was talking to one of my clients and she's in marketing in the industry and she really tries to protect her staff from being overworked, from burning out. And then she's here trying to make up for all that and working a lot of weekends and, having terrible work-life balance. And I'm like, your staff's probably not listening to what you're saying. They're watching you and thinking, if I want to be in her role, this is what's required. And I maybe don't want to do that. So, she's got to lead by example that, it's okay to not work the weekends. It's okay to say no and have boundaries, things like that. and then
Yeah.
they'll actually follow it.
Yeah.
That's the same thing for the guys in the field, because they see us all in meetings. They see all of us, they get off at 8 hours, or, they're hourly. So they get off whenever their hours are up, and they see us still sitting there, or they see all the things we have to deal with. And they're like, well, I don't want to be a foreman. I don't want to be a superintendent. I don't want to move up because of, look at all this extra time you're doing. You're getting paid a little bit well. But I remember when I lived in Las Vegas, some of those guys were working crazy hours and being paid way more than I was. And they're working, over 10 plus hours a day, getting tired, getting burned out. But at the same time, they'll continue doing that before they move up the ladder for some of them, right? Not all of the guys, but for some.
An interesting piece too, right? We do tend to just focus on work and the jobs, and even the World Health Organization defines burnout as a work-related thing. And I don't know that I totally agree with that, because if we have a ton of stuff happening outside of work, right? If I'm having to care for an elder parent, or, going through a rough spot in a marriage or whatever, right? Like, that's adding to the stress. There is no way that we separate these two things and have them just in their own little worlds. So I think a lot of outside stuff can factor into that. And do we even care that our people are dealing with that, right? Do we even ask? I don't know that happens as much as it probably needs to.
That's a really good point, because I deal with a kid that is going through cancer treatments, and we've been dealing with that with June of last year, and that is something I've had to deal with outside of work, but it affects my work. It affects my mental state. It affects how I'm doing day to day. I'm better at it now than I was a year ago, but I'm taking that to work. And I think that ties back into is there really a work-life balance, right? Because sometimes you can't shut that off. There's times where I came to work very emotionally unstable because of what was happening at home. And then I have to come and deal with, 50 people at work and all the activities and get things done and all the decisions I have to make. And that can very much overwhelm and make you want to just go into a hole very quickly.
Right.
So, that connects really well with me, because I've been there. I have had that happen to me just recently. And it made me, and it maybe ties into what you said, Jeff, it made me make a choice, a change to my life and career because of it. Because I didn't want to stay in the situation I was in before and continue down that path. I wanted to find something new. I had to allow the world and allow myself to have it happen. But I was like, I've got to make a change, because I can't continue down this path. But it's unfortunate that that's what makes us have to make those changes.
Yeah. And as an employer, right, if I know that you're experiencing that, I'm going, that's a temporary thing, hopefully, that you're going through. And right, I can give you a little bit of a break as you do that. But if I don't know that that's happening, and now your work's suffering, and I'm just like, well, what's going on with Kelley? So I think it's important as employers that we ask and know more of what our people are going through on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jeff. This has been really great.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you hopping on. And where can we find out more about you? Where can people sign up if they want to have a session with you?
Yeah, everything can be done through my website at reclaim-me.org.
Okay.
So
Awesome.